Okay, well, we're at 1 minute past the hour. So as folks continue to log in, I want to welcome you again. Thank you for joining us this evening as we discuss heritage instruction and dual language immersion in North Carolina schools. My name is Kevin Fogg, and I'm here representing the Duke UNC Area Study Centers, who are co-hosting the program this evening alongside North Carolina Department of Public Instruction. This is part of our broader celebration of learning through languages this week. Some of you teachers who are logged on might have sponsored teams engaging in the Learning Through Languages competition sponsored by UNC. And we were delighted to see the outcome of those teams' work across Spanish, French, German, Chinese, Japanese, and this year also Russian. So it was a fantastic competition. Thank you for those of you who sponsored a team. But tonight we've got a panel of experts to talk about an issue that is not only important, but is growing in importance in our state, working with heritage language learners and our growing dual language immersion programs. To introduce our panel and to moderate this evening, I'm so pleased to welcome my colleague at the North Carolina Department for Public Instruction, Dr. Anne-Marie Gunter. Anne-Marie, can I hand it over to you?
Yes, thank you, Kevin. Let's get going. North Carolina has been a leader in dual language immersion, or DLI, for over 30 years. The first Spanish DLI program began in the fall of 1990. And as of this school year, we have over 225 DLI programs in 8 different languages. Many of our DLI programs are in Spanish and Chinese, as well as French, German, and Japanese. We are also home to programs in Cherokee, Greek, and Urdu. The recent American Council survey of DLI programs in the United States showed that North Carolina is number 5 in the nation and leading the Southeast in the number of DLI programs. As a state, we're also very linguistically diverse, with at least 330 languages other than English being used in North Carolina students' homes. Obviously, this makes heritage language education a priority for us. Tonight, we have 4 panelists who are going to be talking about DLI and heritage language education in their schools and their communities. I'm very pleased to welcome these expert speakers. Lydia Ferguson, who is the principal at North Academy of World Languages in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. Ana Cecilia Lara, an associate professor at UNC Pembroke, as well as director of World Languages and coordinator of the Spanish teacher licensure program there. Kimberly Pilling, the director of global languages at Guilford County Schools, where that first Spanish DLI program is located. And Yi Zhou, teaching professor of Chinese at UNC Chapel Hill and coordinator of the Chinese language program. Thank you all for joining us tonight and sharing your expertise. We have a list of questions that we're working with tonight, but I also encourage you to add your questions to the Q&A for us. You should find the Q&A box there near the chat box as well on your screen. Let's get started with a look at DLI programs in North Carolina. Being in a DLI program means that students are learning the same standards or content as their peers in traditional programs, but they're learning it in English and the DLI program language. A 2-for-1 deal, as Inez Oldhausen, a now retired DLI principal, used to say. There are 2 types of immersion programs, one-way and two-way. These terms refer to the population of students being served in the DLI program based on their first or native language. We use the umbrella term dual language immersion, or DLI, to include both types of programs. In two-way immersion, which is sometimes referred to as dual language, students in the DLI program are a combination of native speakers of English and native speakers of the DLI language. North Carolina has over 80 two-way DLI programs, or about 1/3 of our total. These programs are in 3 languages, Spanish, Chinese, and Urdu. So let's begin with our first question tonight and focus in on our two-way program. How do two-way DLI programs adapt and grow for the needs of heritage and non-heritage speakers of languages like Spanish, Chinese, and Urdu?
Thanks for that question, Anne-Marie. And thanks to everybody for being here. I'm excited to be able to talk about this topic, and I appreciate the folks at DPI and at UNC and Duke for sponsoring this important meeting. So in Guilford County, we are a little bit unique in that we are home to the state's oldest immersion program at Jones and the newest and very unique dual language Urdu program, which may or may not be the only one in the country. So when that program began, there was a lot of work to do. There were certainly other programs that our principal and the staff could look at, but none specific to Urdu. And this program began in 2018. And so over the course of those years, there have been a lot of adjustments and changes that the folks over at Allen J Elementary, which is home to our Urdu dual language program, have implemented. Much of that came simply from reflection. They met together as a staff, the teachers and the administrators, and took a look at what was working and what was not working. One specific example is when the program began, kids who were either in the Spanish dual language or Urdu dual language, they learn the content. It's all North curriculum content, but one day they would learn it in English, and then the second day they would learn it in either Urdu or Spanish. And after meeting and really reflecting on the practice and how the kids were responding, they changed that setup. And so that half of the day, the content is taught in English, the other half of the day in Urdu or Spanish. One important aspect of the school is that they send out all communication to parents in all three languages. I think this is an important thing because it immediately helps families feel like they are a part of that school community. And this is particularly important for families who are newly arrived to the United States. It helps parents feel a little bit less alienated, perhaps, from the school environment. They feel like it's at home and welcoming for them. And also, they have reflected a lot based on teacher feedback and re-looking at the skills that they are building as they have tracked the kindergarten students who are now entering third, or well, almost halfway through third grade, looking at where they need more explicit instruction in either English or Spanish and Urdu. And I know the folks over at Allen J are looking forward to getting back some testing. For the first time, those third graders will have their EOGs. And up until now, they haven't had a lot of formal statewide assessments to look at. So they're really excited to look at those results and then see how they may need to adapt based on what they see in those EOGs.
Great. So that's an update on a two-way immersion program with Spanish and Urdu. And you mentioned, Kimberly, about, is that a unique program in the United States? Well, actually, there's two Urdu DLI programs in the United States, so North Carolina is home to one. Now let's turn to Ijo to talk a little bit about a Chinese immersion program. It's just getting started.
Hello, everyone. So I think one of the ways is to build collaboration between schools and universities. My experience of helping a newly established immersion charter school in Cary shows that the schools with DLI programs would benefit from the support from university resources, and meanwhile, we learn about their needs and try to provide possible solutions. So in summer 2021, just passed, we held a 3-day workshop for to-be teachers for this newly established immersion charter school. And the feedback was very, very positive. So the teachers and the principals, they all reflected that the workshop helped them to learn more about the basics of the Chinese immersion program and also the how to setting how to set the learning goals and assessment for such unique programs. So that is the experience that I work together with this school. I learned we really, you know, if we understand each other, we collab with each other, then the schools of these programs could benefit a lot.
Great. Now let's turn to one-way immersion. In one-way immersion, which is sometimes referred to as just immersion, students in the DLI program are mostly native speakers of English. North Carolina has almost 150 one-way DLI programs, or about 2/3 of our total. These programs are in 7 languages: Cherokee, Chinese, French, German, Greek, Japanese, and Spanish. It's also worth noting that our Cherokee program, Cherokee DLI, is actually a revitalization effort of that language and culture, which is so important to our history, particularly in the western part of the state. So how do one-way DLI programs adapt and grow for the needs of heritage and non-heritage speakers of languages like Chinese, French, and German?
Good evening, everyone. Greetings from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. I am so proud to be the principal of the newly established school, North Academy of World Languages, where we offer German, French, and Chinese to our students in a K-8 environment. And I really like this question because it talks about adapting and growing for the needs of heritage and non-heritage speakers. And particularly in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools, we are an urban school district, and we have a diverse student body. And one of the initiatives that we have been deliberately seeking is to really talk about who we are recruiting for programs such as the one-way immersion programs that I'm so fortunate to lead here. You know, often part of what we do as leaders of these schools is to spend a lot of time in the community to educate families about the benefits of sending their children to a language immersion school and really existing in the spaces where you have a diverse population. I am an African-American lady who studied Spanish and actually graduated from UNC Chapel Hill and benefited from world language study there, and often found myself in spaces where I was the only student who wanted to pursue a degree of higher learning in a world language. So it's important that we look at who we are recruiting for these programs and really existing where the community can take advantage of such an amazing opportunity. Here at North Academy, we are 40% African-American, 24% Latino, and we are thrilled to be able to welcome all types of students into our building to really demonstrate the ability to learn a second language. We take students abroad in the 5th and 8th grade. And so really giving students the opportunity to see themselves outside of the US, the American story, and seeing themselves as true global citizens in different countries is an amazing opportunity here that I think is just fantastic for our students. And so we're really excited to be able to expand the program here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools.
I would like to add something that is about the Spanish and how we are growing over here, the program over here in UNC Pembroke, because of the Spanish population is growing over here. So I'm really happy to have more Hispanic in our programs, and we are preparing Hispanics to become Hispanic professors later on, you know, to become a Spanish teacher for the heritage speakers. So I think it's going to be a wonderful process that we're going to have later on in the future, because these are students that are just starting these years. But yeah, the university over here, the changes that is happening because of the population is growing is something that we are trying to adapt to this. And the way that we're doing it is by working directly with the students. I think the role that the advisors are playing is very important. I think that we need as advisors to work directly with the students, you know, to direct them if they need to take the clip. So we're not going to have heritage speakers is sitting in our Spanish 1 classes, you know. So we really need to work a little bit more closer to the students and to find the right program for them. And also try to figure it out, what classes do we need? And if we need to open more classes for them, you know. So basically we really need to have a closer look of what is the population that is coming to the campus, you know, so we can be growing with that population that is increasing every semester, every year is something different now.
Before we move on to our next topic, I'm looking at a question in the chat box. We had a person inquiring about class sizes. We talked a lot about a growing population, as well as increased interest in DLI programs and heritage language programs. Could we talk a little bit about those class sizes, how you balance that with a growing population, as well as the recruitment efforts that are being done in your districts or in your on your campus to reach out to those students?
I don't mind taking that one first. Here at North Academy, we want to and try to, we have a myriad of programs going our first year, but when we're to scale, we obviously start our immersion programs in kindergarten. And because we don't allow students to enter the program, having not spent the previous year with us in the immersive experience, we try to really fill those classes with as many students as possible. So for us, our kinder classes hover around about 24 to 25 students, with hopes of keeping those cohorts together. The only way a student would be able to enter our program, let's say in the first grade that didn't attend kindergarten, would be to take a language placement test. And so we really try to pack the classes as full as we can that are still manageable for the teachers to be able to facilitate instruction. But as you say, they are very popular, and so we try to get the most out of the students that we have, knowing that we won't be able to add more if they were not already in the school.
So at our L&J, the Urdu and Spanish, it is not a magnet program, it is a neighborhood school. So it serves the children who are in that neighborhood. Class sizes, and I think I saw Caroline Robinson mention that they're typical, the same as any other elementary classroom that you would find. Our OneWay Immersion program, Jones, is a magnet program, and they do try and keep their classes at around 20. That said, they have 3 different kindergarten immersion classes and 3 first grade, and sometimes 4 classes. Just as Lydia said, unless a student takes a placement test, they can't join the program in first grade because they would have missed too much instruction. But we do try and keep those classes at about 20 kids to 25 in line with the state mandates. And I can say that there are always a lot of kids who apply to get into the magnet program at Jones who unfortunately are not able to get in just because we don't have room to accommodate them. So we are trying to look at some solutions for that, because obviously we understand the great value in growing up bilingual and biliterate. And so we do want to offer that to as many children as possible.
Yeah, it's different, I think, at the university level, but we are trying to maintain the language classes no more than 20. But the upper level classes, we always have around no more than 12, 13 students, you know. The cap is 20, but the numbers are always, you know, around that 12, 13 students. And sometimes it's even more personalized, you know. Sometimes we have 5 students if we have to, even though that's very weird. But yeah, we try our best to maintain that very small sizes for the upper level courses?
Yeah, it's quite the same for UNC college, UNC university class sizes. We try to keep the class size as much, as many as 20 for the upper, for the advanced language classes. Then usually we have about 15 around students, but for some popular classes, content-based course classes, like business classes, translation classes, we may have up to 20 and sometimes, over 20 students, but we try to keep the students, the class size under 25. As far as I know, working together with the immersion program in Cary, and the principal told me they keep the class size under 20, as many as 20 students in one class size.
Great. Well, as we said, programs are growing, interest is growing, and we need to come up with creative ways to address that. It sounds like you all have. I did put a link to that American Council survey that I talked about into our chat box. You can all have that. And now, since we spent so much time talking about the students, let's talk about the teachers of these programs. Since students in DLI programs are learning the same standards or content as their peers in traditional programs, it's important to think about who's teaching. Teachers in North Carolina must be certified to teach their content. So elementary teachers have to have an elementary teaching license. Math teachers have to have a math teaching license, and so on. In a DLI program, teachers are teaching their content in the DLI program language. Heritage language programs work a bit differently. In heritage language classes, which used to be called native speakers classes, the courses are designed for students who are learning their home language, but with a special focus on literacy skills like reading and writing. These courses also are used as language continuation courses in DLI programs at the secondary level. These heritage language courses, such as Spanish Heritage 1 and 2, earn high school credit and bridge students into higher level courses like Spanish 4 or Advanced Placement or AP World Language courses, where students might be earning credit as well when they go on to the university. Teachers must be certified to teach the language, so they would have a K12 World Language license, like a K12 Spanish license. But they adjust their instruction to meet the needs of their heritage speakers and to focus on literacy skills, like we said. So here's our question. What are the best ways to recruit high-quality teachers for DLI and heritage language programs?
So for us here at North Academy of World Languages, we are fortunate to be the sister school of a well-established OneWay Immersion program in the southern part of our county. And we really use them to partner and to gain credibility with different organizations, Saturday schools, the German Saturday School, Chinese Saturday School, the French Saturday School, to help us really get the word out to recruit applicants. We all know that there is a national teacher shortage, and imagine trying to find a teacher who has the appropriate license and who also speaks the language fluently enough to be able to teach content in that language. And so I think it's important to really establish international relationships, having councils from different countries coming to visit, using social media platforms to really put your school out there, and establishing these relationships with universities locally and internationally to really come up with teacher exchange programs to be able to have a robust teacher pipeline. I also think it's important, we know that representation matters, and when we're thinking about programs, particularly French, often we have one idea of who speaks French. We think about, France and Europe, but, there are 13 countries where French is the official language, other countries where it's the co-official language, several countries in West Africa And I think all things considered and the teacher quality being the same, it is important to have a diverse teaching staff in front of your students. And so here at North Academy, we were deliberate about, recruiting teachers from the Ivory Coast, Guinea, West Africa, Mauritius, so that our students see themselves even in language and the linguistic diversity, even, with an immersion program. So that's something that I think needs a little bit of attention in programs, so that we can continue to recruit diverse families to our schoolhouses.
I appreciate that comment by Lydia, and I know that particularly at Allen J in our two-way dual language program, they have been very intentional about hiring teachers who look like the students that they teach and who are reflective of them. We know how important that is. And so I concur that we are making sure to do that. We also do work with, there are companies who are dedicated to bringing guest teachers in from various other countries of particularly Spanish-speaking teachers, which we have been very, very fortunate. We've gotten some excellent teachers through those organizations who have brought unique perspectives on culture and schooling that has really enriched our programs. We also have our principals at the schools have sort of come up with their own idea about a pipeline. They're recruiting TAs. They'll find TAs in their classrooms who are native speakers of either Urdu or Spanish, and then training them using our Guilford County licensure system to bring them into the school, which has really been very successful. We're also very lucky in Guilford County in that we work a lot with the good folks over at UNCG. They have Project Enacted, and I think Dr. Jane might be on this call tonight, and she is just a rock star for us and does a lot through Enacted to train teachers, to offer professional development, as well as community outreach programs. So that's been an invaluable resource for us in recruiting and then training high quality teachers.
And we can reach out to recent graduates who had experience teaching the languages in their home countries, such as the international students. They are studying their master degree or PhD degree. And so these are students, they are graduating. So we can recruit these students. They are very qualified. And also we can reach out to the local communities for referrals. So that's one of the ways I recruited my, the teachers, instructors for the department.
Well, I also recommend you to contact us because we are preparing a very good teachers over here. And I have a good contact with all my teachers, all the alumni that I have graduated. I still have contact with them. And we also still conducting trainings with Plank, Anne-Marie, all the teachers preparation over there. So we are in very good contact with everybody. And there are many staff development that we maintain the preparation of the, what is going on today. And after the students are graduating, we are still going with the new techniques with the students. We maintain contact with them. So I think it's a good idea to reach out to the universities to see if they have a, prospect teachers that they will recommend.
Well, once we've got the teachers and in the classroom, they rely on strategies to engage their students and motivate them to learn the language. They also help students build skills in intercultural competence so that they can communicate effectively with native speakers of the language from anywhere in the world. What pedagogical or teaching strategies are most effective for heritage speakers who have formal education in their home language, like in a DLI or heritage language program, or from living in another country?
So when teaching heritage speakers, teachers should consider the language needs and the strengths of the typical heritage language learner in their language. They have relatively strong listening and speaking skills, but limited reading and writing skills. Their purpose to study the heritage language mainly to connect with the communities of their language speakers in the US and relatives or friends in their home countries. And also they want to gain insights to their target cultures, or some heritage language speakers, they would like to use the language for their career plans. So literacy and intercultural skills would be the focus for teaching heritage speakers. And heritage learners some of the heritage learners, because they're very high proficiency, and they may require further assistance in understanding a variety of authentic materials that instructors can consider getting from the internet, from the social media, to help these students to be opposed to authentic materials. And also the authentic materials could be cultural materials for them to learn and understand their cultures. So these group of students, heritage language learners, they are different from the non-heritage speakers in terms of their needs and strengths. So we should pay more attention, or should focus their needs and strengths when teachers teaching this group of students.
Likewise here, we have a diverse linguistic student body. The majority of our students are English speakers in the home, but we do a lot of education and recruit students who are IELTS, English language learners. And so often there's a misconception that students who speak a language other than English at home, Spanish, Russian, Chinese, would not do well in a one-way immersion program. The thought process is, well, you know, if they haven't mastered English, why would they take another language? And the research bears to say very different, that, you know, these students are already linguistically diverse and do very well in these programs. So a lot of my conversation and education with parents who are apprehensive about taking that leap of faith, we certainly encourage them to apply. Likewise, speakers of English are diverse linguistically. We have students who are speakers of African American English vernacular. And so sometimes there are stereotypes about those students who have not mastered standard English, not being able to thrive in these programs. And we know sociolinguistic research says very different, that those students are already used to being in diverse environments where they have to be part of different social circles. And so they too do well in programs. And there's several bodies of research that immersion is the way to close opportunity gaps. And so hopefully as the word gets out there and we are recruiting and advertising in different locations, part of the stereotype is that these immersion programs exist in middle-class white neighborhoods. And so we want to really get the word out that this program is for everyone. And there is no one type of student who does well in these one-way immersion programs.
Well, let's take a slightly different look at this question. So what pedagogical or teaching strategies are most effective for heritage speakers, but those who have learned their language with their family? maybe because their parents have worked in another country, or they have extended family who still live in another country, or perhaps through a community or weekend school, like we mentioned before in recruiting teachers.
Yeah, maybe that's the cases of the that we have over here, because we live very close. We're very close to Fort Bragg. We have some military families that they are being exposed to the language. They speak the language because they need the language. They are in the special forces and they have learned the language, but they really are not heritage speakers. So they want their kids to know the language, and the way that they learn it was just to communicate. But we also have the students who their parents are Hispanics, and they also are heritage speakers. So sometimes they don't want to speak because they were taught to speak English at schools, and just Spanish at home. And they believe that their Spanish is not good enough. So basically we had to start working in the insecurity of their language, and as Aliria was mentioned about the sociolinguistics, let them know that Spanish is okay. And we have one class over here that I love that class, that we talk about the different dialects in the different countries. And when they see that class, and when they're in that class, they say, oh, wow, so my Spanish is good, it's good enough. So basically introduce them to that knowledge, that the Spanish that they speak is good, okay? But let's talk about standardized Spanish that we need for the class, what is it that we need for this? And with that mentality, they start, realizing, okay, I understand this, I got this. And the way that we teach, or that we need to teach the grammar to them, is not the same way that we need to teach the English learners, the Spanish learners. I'm sorry, I'm trying to say the L2, but it's whose English first language is different to the ones the Spanish first language learn. Because for them, I'm not going to tell them, okay, yo hablo, tú hablas, él habla. They already know that, or how they do the past tense. I rather to explain with a sentence. Okay, what did you do yesterday? And if they have a pattern of how to think that, so they can put that tense, they will figure it out a little bit better, that sentence had to have that accent, So basically, we need to have a better structure on how to teach those type of students, okay? And then give more, material that is more authentic material. The reading has to be different. And the most difficulty that they're going to have is going to be in the writing. So we're going to have to write a little bit closer or work a little bit closer with them. Yeah.
So everyone has given such great responses. Really, I just should say ditto, and we could be done. I appreciate the points that have been brought up. Obviously, authentic resources. I think everyone has mentioned that. I do know that for our heritage learners, our teachers give them lots and lots of writing. I appreciate this question because my sister is an English teacher back in Canada, and she would say that text messaging has just destroyed English speakers' ability to read and write in English. So I think that a lot of educators are sort of in the same boat. We have found recently some success with doing silent sustained reading. So some of our teachers have recently begun to just give their kids 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning of a class. They have a plethora of authentic books, resources, a variety of subjects, and their kids can choose a book and just sit there and read at the beginning of class. And we have found a lot of anecdotal evidence that has really been helping our heritage speakers. And I did want to just reiterate, I know that the panelists have talked about this before, but an important part of our pedagogy is really bringing in culturally relevant instruction. We can have a classroom with kids who are from 5 or 6 different countries. And so as has been mentioned before, we want those kids to be proud of their heritage, be proud of their countries. Many of them may have been born here, but their parents were born elsewhere. And we certainly don't want them to feel like that's a deficit or a negative, but see that as a great asset. And so making sure that our teachers are recognizing the different cultures of all of those students and bringing that contribution into the classroom has been a great focus for us in Guilford County.
Before we move on to our next question, I want to pull one from the chat box. We mentioned earlier that North Carolina is number 5 in the nation for the number of DLI programs that we offer. And indeed, almost half of our districts are offering at least one DLI program. But we're leading in the Southeast as number 1. And one of our neighbors here in the Southeast, Virginia, wants to know what the secret to our success is in North Carolina in establishing DLI programs. Now, obviously, one thing we could quickly answer is, well, we started a long time ago and we built from there and built on that success and shared across the state about that success. But that's not the only factor. And I will say, before we get some responses from our panelists about why North Carolina is so successful with DLI, that in fact, Virginia and North Carolina and many other states in the Southeast work very closely together to help build programs like DLI or heritage language programs, because we know how important that is to our students and we know how important that is to our communities when we think about moving and succeeding in the 21st century. So I would ask our panelists, what's the secret to our success here in North Carolina that we could share with our neighbors?
I'll take a stab at it. I think, you know, we talk so much about test prep culture. We talk so much about teaching to the test. And I think this environment really offers students a rigorous, it's kind of like, as you said, Anne-Marie Inez said, you get a 2-for-1. And so for me, I hear so much feedback from parents that the students love it. It is fun, it is different. It really meets the needs of students who are academically gifted, because you can really stretch those students. And so a lot of parents who have gifted children choose our programs. I think as we are just more mobile as a society and creating jobs that don't even exist yet, and parents are seeing that their students need these skills to be able to thrive in these diverse environments. And so lastly, I'll say it's a byproduct of it, but the test scores do show that students in these programs do better than their monolingual peers. And so you really get the students enjoy it. You know, they have the ability to study and go to these different countries. And, you know, parents do want their children to be competitive, and this really offers all of that. So I know that has been the feedback. We've just been open since August. So, and parents really are enjoying the experience their kids are having.
Right, great. Well, let's continue to think about that question, because we're always sharing about what makes a good success with the DLI program. And I think we're also hitting on things like, you know, we're replicating that success. Lydia's school is brand new, as she said, it just opened. Kimberly has schools that have been open for a long time, but have shared this success across their district and across the region in North Carolina about how to establish DLI programs and build them into a K12 sequence. So let's talk about that K12 sequence more. When students enter the secondary level, especially high school, we have to think about how they're recognized for their bilingualism and biliteracy. We also turn to our post-secondary colleagues to find out what our community colleges and universities have to offer students as they move on to jobs and careers. High school seniors can earn different diploma endorsements, including the Global Languages Endorsement, or GLE, which is North Carolina's seal of biliteracy. On our higher education campuses, there are flagship programs, majors and minors in the language, and other offerings like Languages Across the Curriculum, or LAC courses. How do K-12 recognitions, like the Seal of Biliteracy, and higher education offerings support 21st century students' language learning needs?
Thanks, Anne Marie. Yeah, the Seal of Biliteracy has been a really important recognition for our students, and our teachers have done a great job at advertising that. Kids and parents may not necessarily know about that seal, and it has been a good tool for us to encourage our students to move beyond, the level 1 and the 2 languages. I do need to talk about one particular high school, Grimsley High School, which is the feeder pattern for our kids starting out at our Jones OneWay Immersion. They did a great job years ago at adapting curriculum to serve the needs of those students coming from the K12 program in Jones, the 6-8 at Swan, which is the middle school. And Grimsley, in fact, has their own recognition for those students that followed those 13 years, which was a really great idea. We've got a great team of educators there. Also, you mentioned the Russian flagship program at UNC, which is a really great way to show kids things that they can do in less commonly spoken languages. One thing that I am particularly excited about that we're working on in Guilford County is to help students realize that if they do speak another language fluently, there are so many opportunities for them. So we have recently begun working with both NC State, their International Business Dual Degree Program, and the folks at Keenan Flagler Business School at UNC. We hope to create a cohort of kids, and we're particularly focusing on our heritage language learners because we want them from a really young age to not only recognize the Seal of Biliteracy, but to become part of this specialized cohort that is prepared specifically to go into fields like international business or some sort of global studies. I think probably one of the most important things about these recognitions are that we want, again, our Spanish-speaking kids, our heritage speakers, to realize that they have a great asset that sets them apart. We have found, based on feedback from my teachers, so many of our Spanish speakers feel like it's not that big of a deal that they speak Spanish. And we want them to be really proud of that heritage and of that culture and realize that as a fully bilingual and biliterate grade 12 graduate, there are many, many doors open to them. Part of what we want to do is show them exactly what those doors are, but part of what we want to do is build that sense of pride and accomplishment in them. And I think that these endorsements and programs help to do that.
And thanks, Kipling, talking about how students feel so proud of themselves to reaching the proficiency to take some really advanced level of language classes. At UNC Chapel Hill, we do offer languages across the curriculum, like a Chinese program. These are an Arabic program too. These are programs offer we say LAC, language across the curriculum courses. So it's a kind of a recitation class for students whose proficiency are good enough to discuss the content course subjects in the target language, like Chinese. And so while students learning the content course subjects, and they're using the target language to discuss the contents. So it's really beneficial for the students. Language works as a tool for them to, to learn the subject. It's very beneficial for the students. And the students, from the feedback of the students, we offer, this LAC courses at Chapel Hill for years. And each year, we have very positive feedback, and the class is really popular among the students whose level is good enough to take the class.
Yeah, and we're seeing a few more questions about the K-12 sequence and then what happens when students move on to the university. Stephanie was asking, are there DLI programs across all grade levels K-12, or are they more primarily focused in the elementary and middle grades? Well, we do have K-12 DLI programs in the state. It is often the case, as you might imagine, that we have more elementary programs than we might have middle school and high school, and that's partly just the way education is structured. You think about whatever school district you're most familiar with, there are usually multiple elementary schools, several of which feed into, let's say, 1 or 2 or 3 middle schools, and then middle schools that feed into 1 high school. So by virtue of how we structure things, we have more elementary schools in general than we have middle schools and then, of course, high schools. The other part about DLI programs being K-12, of course, is that as you're building a program, as you've heard Lydia and Kimberly kind of mention, you start with that first kindergarten cohort. And then the next year you add a first grade and you welcome your second kindergarten cohort. And you build your program that way across the grade levels until that cohort reaches 5th grade. And then they move on to a middle school program. And so that's how programs are built over time for DLI. And each district decides how are they going to do that immersion continuation program at the secondary level. And you've heard several people mention here tonight about different ways they look at that and different opportunities for the students. Would anyone like to comment further on that K-12 articulation, or what happens when those DLI students come to our campuses across the state and what their expectations are there?
So for us here in our K-8 school, since we are a magnet and students can normally come into our 6th grade program, we have students who have been on the immersion track who have the opportunity at the middle school level to choose a different language so that it meets their world language criteria. So we have students who sometimes stick with the language or they select a second language to study. And then we have those students who come into the program, some know the language, some don't. So we really have to tailor our middle school program to fit the needs of students who either have some of the background, want to select a different language, or want to continue in that language and really differentiate for those students who've been in it K-5. And then a challenge for us here is to have a nice articulation at the high school level, because our students are so fluent. By the time they get to high school, they sometimes often find themselves in the same level courses of students who are just taking it for the first time. And so again, the level of differentiation at the high school level is important. And I know that's an opportunity that we recognize here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, but we do have a feeder program where they can at least continue to take those higher level classes in the high school level. But that is an area of opportunity for us here, I know, in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools.
I think another challenge for the higher grades is just resources. It's difficult to find resources for certainly in Chinese, in Russian, to find authentic resources that teach the content. For example, in a math class or a science class or a biology class. So that can be challenging when you want to offer broad spectrum immersion courses for the higher grades. But it is getting better. And but I think that is a challenge. And then again, finding qualified teachers, because you're not just looking for someone who is fluent in the language, but someone who is fluent in Arabic, in Chinese, in Russian, in Spanish, who is certified to teach chemistry. So those are some of the problems facing the full immersion or even dual language programs in, I would say, 6 through 12 education.
So there are lots of challenges, particularly as students get older, as we know. There's also several questions about our seal of biliteracy. And I think we should contextualize that a little bit. Seal of biliteracy is actually a national movement. It's a way for high school seniors who are graduating to be recognized for their bilingualism and biliteracy. And here in North Carolina, our seal of biliteracy, that global languages endorsement, actually focuses on recognizing students for their multilingualism and multiliteracy because it can be earned in multiple world languages. The requirements for seal of biliteracy are often very similar state to state. Here in North Carolina specifically, students must meet a requirement for English as well as at least one world language. Like I said, they can meet those requirements in multiple world languages if they would like. Our minimum level of proficiency for seal of biliteracy here in North Carolina is intermediate low. And so there's several ways students can meet that, and they can also achieve a higher level of proficiency that gets put right onto their transcripts as they go on to university admissions by doing things like taking an external exam that measures proficiency in a different way, maybe than course completion might, because that's one of the ways you can meet the world language requirement. So for example, we have what's called the credit by demonstrated mastery process here in North Carolina, and that goes kind of hand in hand with some of the things we do with the world language requirement for the seal of biliteracy. Our students can take a proficiency-based exam, and there were several questions in the chat about which exams are used for either the credit by demonstrated mastery process and or earning the seal of biliteracy and completing that world language requirement. And the answer is it varies. We've got a whole list of proficiency-based exams that align to our state standards in world languages and measure proficiency in the way we need it to help us. Now, those exams are also used in other ways. Many times our districts, particularly ones that have DLI programs, use those exams at the end of courses or at the end of grade span. So when students are moving from elementary to middle school or middle school to high school, they might give them those exams to find out where is their proficiency level in the language they're learning, and what does that mean, for example, for their placement going forward. So not only just earning a recognition, let's say, and completing the requirement for the world languages part of our seal of biliteracy, but in fact, thinking about where will they go next. And so a lot of times those exams are chosen locally, as you might expect, since we're a local control state here in North Carolina. And they use all kinds of exams, including exams you've probably heard about, like advanced placement world language exams, international baccalaureate exams, and so on and so forth from different vendors, again, that have proficiency-based exams. Now, the next challenge, because we've had our seal of biliteracy since the class of 2015, is to ask our higher education colleagues, what comes next? When you get these graduates, either who have a seal of biliteracy or have extensive background and higher levels of proficiency in the language, what do you offer them? You've heard about the LAC courses on some of the UNC campuses. Is there anything else you'd like to share from a higher education standpoint that our students who have higher levels of proficiency in language might be ready for?
Well, we already have one case that came already with the seal of biliteracy. And I was so happy when I find out. I didn't know, okay, she already had the credits, the university gave them the credits. I didn't have to deal with that. So, because when I find out that the student was already in the upper level classes and I didn't place it like over there. So it was the university already knew the process. So they already give them the credits of the elementary 1, elementary 2, intermediate 1, intermediate 2. So she went directly to the, ready to have a minor in Spanish or to sign up for the major in Spanish, because she was ready for those courses to start in that point. So that was good. That was excellent. But again, that was the first time that we have a student that came with the seal, and that she expressed that to me. So I was very happy. So yes, so they can come with that and they are going to, they don't have to take the CLEP because they already have that in their hands and it has, the recognition. So that's good. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, at the UNC, we do when the students ask for the more advanced Chinese classes, then we give them a placement test and to see which class, which level fits them. And once they are, some of very good students from the dual language program, they are beginning classes is the advanced classes offered at UNC Chapel Hill. And we do have a more advanced classes related to Chinese history, Chinese internet literature, and also the one of the classes I'm going to offer tea culture. So all the content-based language advanced classes that ready for those students with high proficiency students. So if students are interested, they have the classes available for them to learn the contents and while improving their language skills.
It's good to hear an update on that from our North Carolina campuses. I know that our national research on the seal of biliteracy has shown that more and more colleges are welcoming students who have that seal of biliteracy, placing them, as you said. They're reporting that students are usually, let's say, halfway to a minor or even more in the language. And they're finding that students, once they realize they are already sort of in progress to earning that minor or earning, let's say, a certificate in the language in one of their fields of study, that they're more likely to go ahead and complete that. So there was a time when I think our higher education colleagues were worried that if a student had done all of that and gotten the seal of biliteracy, that they wouldn't study language anymore. But we're finding out the opposite is true. Now they're encouraged to keep going with their language, because not only can they get college credit, like you heard Anna Cecilia talk about, or enter into classes like E talked about, but in fact, they can earn things like a business certificate or medical certificate. They can learn to be an interpreter. In fact, some of our career and technical education programs, as well as our community college programs that work with like early college programs that transition from high school to higher education, they are offering those kinds of opportunities to students as they're still teenagers, actually before they graduate, but they know they're on track with things like the seal of biliteracy requirements and so forth, and they have the language skills they need to be successful. I'm checking our question box to make sure we've gotten to everything that we can. But while we're thinking about that, we've had such a great conversation tonight, but before we end, I want us to think optimistically and sort of out of the box, if you will, about the future of language education for DLI and for heritage speakers. Each of you as panelists, I want to ask you, what is one change that you want to see in the field of heritage teaching and dual language immersion language learning that would ensure our students are economically competitive global citizens?
I'll start with that by saying that one change we wanted to see has happened, and that is growing the program for more than 10 to 15 years. We had one OneWay Immersion program here in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools, and really with the 2017 bond referendum, parents really rallied around bringing this opportunity to our northern part of the county for students. We had several families that were driving across town for this amazing opportunity, and being able to host those town meetings and, polling the community for what languages they wanted to offer, giving input on the design of the building was really a great way to galvanize the community to continue to grow these programs as the word gets out. I'll also say we have a real opportunity here to partner with our universities to really help us grow the pipeline for teachers. Here we're considering taking those students, many who are ALS, English language learners who already speak the language, and putting them in teacher prep programs so that they graduate with the correct licensure and already have the language proficiency to really roll into these immersion teaching positions. So it's an exciting time here. in CMS, and the only way to get better is to offer a third in another part of the county, and who knows, it's remains to be seen what the interest will be for the future.
I can wish, I really would like to see the area that we are serving to have more programs. I would love to have the programs that Lydia is starting over there, or the Kimberly has so strong, already working with. I would like to see it over here around my area, especially the heritage programs. Also, we have many heritage speakers and classes, and they are not, they're being neglected. So I really would like to see that we are paying more attention to them, and to have more programs of the DLI. And if I can be any help starting those programs, I would love to do it. Okay, I would like to be involved. I can offer my time, but I really would like to see it, because around this area, I think the Cumberland County is the only one that have some programs that they are working good over there, but we don't have nothing around this area. Nothing in Robertson County, nothing. Samson Hawk, Bladen, Columbus, nada. So again, I can help if anybody needs my help to start anything.
Yeah, I would like to say I'm hoping we will have a more collaboration across K-20 educators. We know more about each program and about the needs of these programs. We can help each other, and we can work each other. We can work together with each other. We can make the programs more successful.
I think that's a great suggestion. And K20, we do think about K12 collaboration. We don't often, or not often enough, talk about bridging that gap between the K12 and the university education. So I would love to see that too. I have a lot of things on my list. Some of them I think are attainable and some maybe not, but we have been expanding our Spanish heritage course offerings, which I'm happy about. I would like to see that go even further. I would love to see our Chinese program shift from regular instruction to an immersion program. I think that we have the foundation in place. I think that would be wonderful. I would love to create, we have, as I mentioned before, 2 one-way immersion schools for our kids who go to Kirkman Park. There's nowhere for them to go once they finish elementary school. So I would really love to start a pipeline for them so that they could continue their studies on at least through middle school. And then my last big hope is that we could introduce Arabic into our district, Arabic instruction for non-speakers, and particularly heritage, because we do have a large population of Arabic speakers in Guilford County. They're not concentrated in a certain area, so to do an immersion program for elementary might be difficult, but I would really love to see us be able to introduce Arabic and include Arabic heritage courses. So that's what's on my list, my to-do list.
Well, I like thinking about it as to-do lists. So if you see the change, be a force to make that change. As we're concluding here tonight, again, I'm looking into our Q&A and our chat. We've got someone asking about the balance of DLI programs across different types of districts and communities. So for example, urban communities, suburban, and of course, rural communities. And I'll start by saying, DLI programs in North Carolina are everywhere. They're more prevalent along what we would call the I-40 corridor in North Carolina, and all of the counties and districts that are close to I-40, and then as you spread out. I want us to picture in our minds for a moment how that might look. Also keep in mind that North Carolina is divided into 8 educational regions across the state. Every region has at least 1 or 2 districts with a DLI program. And many of our regions have more than that. We do, of course, have, even here tonight, examples of urban programs with Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools. Some would argue that Greensboro with Guilford County Schools is also urban, or to some degree, suburban. But our programs exist in many places. So when you think about the large cities or the small cities, as well as the small towns in North Carolina, you don't really have to go too far to find a DLI program. And I'll cite a couple of examples. Cecilia is worried about having more DLI programs in her area of the state, and there are programs growing in that area. Cumberland County Schools, Onslow County Schools, New Hanover County Schools are building programs and have been for a number of years in some cases. But of course, we would always welcome more. We also have DLI programs in very rural areas. You cite Dare County Schools out on the Outer Banks, very small community. But they have actually started DLI programs, and they made sure that every single one of their elementary schools has at least one DLI cohort. The oldest cohort right now is in 4th grade. So they're going to venture soon into middle school and then high school, but they're already building towards that possibility. And I'm sure some of you probably know of other examples, maybe schools you've worked with who are wanting to start a DLI program or have, and so you connected with them. Does anybody want to share about programs and the balance of programs across different types of communities?
I think you were probably the expert on that one, Anne Marie. You did an excellent job responding.
Well, I know some of your programs have worked with those hosted school site visits and that kind of thing. Do you want to talk a little bit about how someone might learn more about bringing a DLI program to their school? What is it you could do as existing and established DLI programs that could help them?
We didn't necessarily, start from scratch here, but it felt like it when you're recruiting and onboarding your parents. And for us, it was really partnering with an already existing schools. We did lots of school tours. We did lots of professional development between teachers who have been teaching for a long time. With when you're starting a new program, your teachers need an example of what it looks like. When kids are coming in at the beginning and you're going over something as simple as safety procedures, the question was, do I do that in the target language or in English? So those funny things that we probably want to teach about how to get out in a fire drill, probably in the English, in the language that the kids understand, but those are just the details that you need in your building to be able to get your program up and going, as well as we're fortunate here in CMS to have world language specialists. I know, Anne-Marie, you know Mara Code well, to really help us with resources and find vendors. We're working on our MTSS standard treatment protocol for our school, and just having someone who knows different vendors to find resources on how we intervene on students' behalf who aren't showing, who aren't progressing in the language, the target language is a real plus too. So I would just say, partnering, visiting, really making your staff available to help teachers figure out, how to start the program has been a real godsend for us here.
Right.
And also we may consider inviting the expert from the other states, like Utah State, as we did for the summer workshop, a very, very experienced Mandarin instructor. And she talked all the details about the language and class goal, and even including the how to display a classroom for the instructors. It's really, really helpful for, the teachers or for the new school to prepare, for their classrooms, for prepare their teaching materials. So very handy, And also we are planning for a follow-up workshop for these teachers after times of teaching. And we will invite the expert again and to do a kind of, reflection on the teaching experience by those teachers, and she can help talk about the what's right, what's wrong, and help these teachers and give some first-hand instructions. So I think, well, not only within the state experts, and also we can invite the expert from the other states, which their programs has been there for years.
That's a really good point about learning from other states, just like they learn from us sometimes. I know here in North Carolina, the Foreign Language Association North Carolina, or FLANC, includes DLI educators in both their fall and spring conferences. In fact, they've absorbed what used to be our DLI seminar for administrators and teachers. It's just part of the K-20 world language teaching community that goes to FLANC. But likewise, we've learned from our neighbors to the south. There's a Georgia Dual Immersion Institute, or GADI, as it's called, and we have benefited from attending those sessions, most of which have been online even before the pandemic, so that they could share across states. We've also been invited to share from North Carolina about what we do here. Also, our neighbor to the north, we mentioned them earlier, Virginia, we've worked hand in hand with them on things like DLI implementation guides and what we have here. For example, we have a whole North Carolina DLI program directory, so that when you're curious about a DLI program or you want to maybe visit, you can actually look up who the DLI coordinators or administrators are for the district, connect with them, and arrange a visit or an exchange of information. And likewise, Virginia has their own dual language administrators group, an official group that works to build their programs in Virginia, and they have helped us in helping our administrators think about that. In addition, our higher education colleagues have done things like created the DLI Administrator Certificate. That's out of ECU, East Carolina University. It's available online to everyone who's interested in taking, composed of 4 courses. And it helps prepare an administrator who may not have a background in language programs, let alone DLI programs and what they need. It helps them prepare to be good leaders for those programs and to establish a program well, hire teachers effectively, and make sure that that K-12 sequence is established.
I think that's a great point, Anne-Marie, and administrators are key. Most of them, in my experience, don't necessarily have a world language background. I think data is really important in that case, because even if you don't have experience in world language, you can look at the data. And if we're looking at closing achievement gaps, this is the way to do it. And so I think conversations like this are very helpful, because if we can find one teacher, one administrator who gets enthused and realizes that it's possible, the roadmap is out there, the plan is out there. DPI, Department of Public Instruction, has great resources for folks. And Cecilia just said she'll help anybody. So there you go. You can just contact her. She would be fantastic.
Well, I'm looking to see if we have any more questions. Kevin or Emma, is there anything else we need to address tonight?
Well, the one thing I do want to make sure we address is how much we appreciate all the teachers who are already out there doing this dual language education, who are teaching in immersion programs, who are trying to get immersion programs started, which is yeoman's work. And I do not envy you, but I'm so thankful for you. I know that it's been a very difficult year for educators across the country, and certainly here in North Carolina. And on behalf of the panel tonight, I hope, and also certainly on behalf of the Duke UNC Area Study Centers, I want to thank you all for taking time to join us. want to thank you for the teaching and the hard work that you're doing in our schools and with our students and supporting our communities through a very difficult year. I'm so grateful to the panel this evening. This has been a really informative conversation, but also an uplifting conversation. I feel like I've got a much more positive vision of where we can be going as a state in all of our linguistic diversity and all of our diversity of our communities, how we can be supporting them through these kinds of programs. So let me once again thank our moderator this evening, Dr. Anne-Marie Gunter from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, and our panelists, Professor Ejo of my home institution, UNC Chapel Hill, Lydia Ferguson, who's joining us from Charlotte-Mecklenburg County Schools, Kimberly Pilling from Guilford County Schools, and Professor Cecilia Lara from UNC Pembroke. If you're interested in more information, you can reach out to me and I'll stick my email into the chat now. I'm Kevin Fogg, or kfogg at email.unc.edu. And I'm happy to answer further questions about this program. If you want to share this with others, we will have a video recording of this up on YouTube in the coming days so that folks who are unable to join us synchronously tonight can watch at their leisure. If this were a live webinar, if this were a live seminar, I think our panel would be hearing uproarious applause from across the state. I apologize that all you get to hear is me, but thank you once again for all that you are doing and for the comments that you shared tonight. I think it's time for us to sign off. Thanks to everybody.